Hello, this is your host, and today we're going to talk about how to have a good conversation. Now, a good conversation can be an enlightening experience. It broadens our perspectives, increases our understanding of the world around us, and can make us feel more connected to the people around us. But all too often, conversations devolve into arguments and discussions become heated. So today, we're going to look at the general principles that underpin good dialogue and successful negotiation. These will help you to have better conversations with your colleagues, your friends, your family members, and anyone else you interact with. We'll cover 4 key areas that you should focus on to have a good conversation. The first is active listening. The second is preparation. The third is emotional intelligence. And finally, the fourth is trust building. Let's start with active listening. When we're having a conversation, it's easy to get into the mindset of thinking about what we're going to say next, rather than focusing on what the other person is saying. This tendency becomes even greater when we're engaging in a discussion over email. We read a message and immediately start typing out our response. Before we even finish reading what the other person had to say, active listening means focusing on truly understanding the other party's perspective and communicating that to them. Here are 3 things you can do to improve your active listening skills. First, use positive body language. Maintain appropriate eye contact and use open and inviting gestures. You could nod your head to show you're paying attention, lean towards the person speaking to demonstrate you're engaged in the conversation, and keep your facial expressions relaxed and positive. Positive body language helps to put the other person at ease and encourages them to share more. Second, paraphrase. Paraphrasing shows the other party that you're not only hearing their words, but you're also processing and trying to understand their meaning. When someone says something, repeat it back to them in your own words. For example, "So let me make sure I understand. You're saying X because you want Y." By paraphrasing, you demonstrate that you're listening, highlight any misunderstandings, and ensure that you're both on the same page. Remember, the goal of active listening is to see things from the other person's point of view. This can be challenging, especially if you have a strong emotional reaction to what they're saying. But by making an effort to understand their perspective, you'll be able to build rapport and find common ground. The second key area for a good conversation is preparation. The more prepared you are, the more likely you are to have a productive discussion. Preparation involves gathering information and setting goals. Let's take a closer look at each of these. First, gather information. Before you engage in a conversation, take some time to learn as much as you can about the other party's needs, interests, and constraints. If you're dealing with a team, it can be helpful to study up on each member's role and responsibilities so you know who to address particular questions or concerns to. Understanding the broader context of the discussion will help you determine what kind of conversation style to expect and how to best position your own interests. For example, if you're discussing a business deal with someone from the Middle East, it would be useful to research the religious customs and cultural norms in the region. Knowing that Ramadan is taking place, for example, might lead you to schedule your call for a time that doesn't interfere with prayer times. Gathering information can also involve researching the other party's past statements or actions related to the topic at hand. Has the person ever publicly stated their views on the issue? Are there any reports or articles that could shed light on their position? Is there a history between you and the other party that could inform how the conversation goes? All of these questions can help you prepare for the conversation ahead. Preparation can also help you avoid misunderstandings. For example, if you are working with a global team, consider the different ways the same concept can be perceived across cultures. In the United States, the word salary can carry negative connotations. But in many parts of Asia, the term compensation is preferred. Taking the time to think about how you phrase things can prevent unnecessary offense or confusion. Second, clearly define your objectives. When you're preparing for a conversation, it's important to have a clear sense of your objectives. What are your ideal outcomes? What's your bottom line or minimum acceptable outcome? This is also known as your BATNA, or best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Knowing your BATNA will help you recognize when an agreement is not working in your favor and it's time to walk away. For example, let's say you're meeting with your boss to discuss a raise. Your ideal outcome might be getting a 15% raise. But what if you're only able to negotiate for a 5% raise? Your BATNA in this case might be asking for a flexible work schedule instead of a salary increase. Having a clear idea of your objectives will help you stay focused during the conversation and prevent you from accepting an outcome that does not meet your needs. The third key area to focus on is emotional intelligence. Our emotions can sometimes cloud our judgment and cause us to say things we don't mean or make decisions we later regret. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand and manage our emotions while also being aware of the emotions of others. There are two main aspects of emotional intelligence: managing yourself and managing others. Let's start with managing yourself. If you go into a conversation feeling angry or tense, it can be difficult to listen and communicate effectively. Take a moment to assess your own emotions before starting the conversation. If you're feeling overwhelmed, take a few deep breaths or excuse yourself for a moment to collect your thoughts. When you're calm, you're better able to listen, empathize, and problem solve. Second, managing others. Being aware of the other person's emotions is just as important as managing your own. Pay attention to their body language and tone of voice. If they seem upset or frustrated, try to understand their perspective and acknowledge their feelings. For example, if a colleague is late to a meeting, instead of getting angry and writing them off as irresponsible, consider that they may have been held up by something urgent and important. Having empathy and understanding can help diffuse tension and keep the conversation productive. Emotional intelligence is an essential skill for effective communication. By managing your own emotions and being aware of the emotions of others, you can create a more positive and productive conversation. The final key area is trust building. People are more likely to have a constructive and open conversation with someone they trust. There are two important aspects of building trust. The first is being transparent, and the second is keeping promises. Let's look at each of these in turn. First, be transparent. When you're about to enter a conversation, it's important to be transparent about your intentions and boundaries. For example, let the other party know what you hope to achieve through the discussion and what topics are off limits. Being upfront about your expectations will help set the tone for the conversation and make the other party more likely to reciprocate with honesty. You should also be open to sharing information and be willing to compromise. A good conversation requires a give and take, and if you're willing to be vulnerable and open with the other party, they'll be more likely to do the same. Second, keep your promises. One of the quickest ways to break down trust is by not following through on your commitments. If you agree to send the other party a document by a certain date, make sure you follow through. If you say you'll keep something confidential, honor that promise. By being reliable and keeping your word, you'll build a foundation of trust that will make it easier to have productive conversations in the future. A conversation is one of the most basic elements of human interaction. It's how we learn, connect, and do business. But sometimes conversations can be challenging. Whether we're dealing with a difficult colleague or trying to resolve a conflict with a friend, it can be tough to know how to proceed. Hopefully, the tips we've discussed today will help you to approach conversations with more confidence and skill. Remember to actively listen, be prepared, be emotionally intelligent, and build trust. With practice, you'll be well on your way to becoming a better conversationalist and negotiator. Thank you for watching this episode. Please like and subscribe. If you found the content useful, please share it with others, and we'll see you next time.
In this video, I will be discussing 4 different types of negotiation strategies you can use. The first is a win-win approach. The second one is focusing on interests rather than positions. The third one is evidence-based negotiation. And the fourth one is tactical flexibility. Let's dive into each of them. The first type of negotiation strategy is the win-win approach. This is also called integrative bargaining, where the objective is to find a solution that satisfies the interests of both sides. This is the most commonly used negotiation strategy. It stems from what is known as the Harvard negotiation model by Fisher and Urey. According to this model, there are 5 steps to a successful negotiation. They are: separate the people from the problem, focus on interests, not positions, develop options for mutual gain, use objective criteria to reach an agreement, and be willing to make concessions. So, how does this work in practice? Let me take an example. Let's say you're starting a new business and you need office space. You go to a commercial realtor who shows you an office building. He has listed the building is old and unattractive and he wants $8,000 a month for it. But it turns out that there are no other buildings available on the market at the moment because of high demand. You tell the realtor that your budget is only $6,000 a month and ask him to see if the owner of the building would be willing to accept that price. The realtor tells you that the owner would never agree to such a low price and leaves. Now, here you have 2 options. Either you pay the $8,000 a month and you get the office building, or you do get an office building and delay your business start date. However, instead of just accepting the situation as it is, you can try the win-win negotiation model. So you call the realtor back and tell him that although UV only budgeted $6,000 a month, you'd be willing to pay $7,000 a month for a longer lease term. The realtor asks why, and you tell him that since this is a long-term commitment for you, you want to be sure that you're getting the best possible deal. He thinks about it for a minute and says that he asks the owner if she would be willing to do that. After a couple of days, the realtor calls you back and says that the owner would agree to $7,000 a month for a 3-year lease term. Now you've got what you wanted, and the owner got more money than she would have otherwise. So both sides win with this arrangement. As you can see, the win-win negotiation model works well when there is a lot of room for compromise. However, sometimes the situation is such that one side wins and the other loses. Even then, if you apply the 5 steps mentioned earlier, you may be able to turn it into a win-win situation. But in some cases, it's simply impossible. We'll talk more about those situations later in this lesson. The next negotiation strategy is focusing on interests rather than positions. To understand the difference between the two, let's use the same example as before. Let's say you ask for a 20% raise. Your boss says no. Now, your reaction could be that you were hoping for a little more than 10%. So you counter with 15%, then your boss says no again. At this point, most people would keep raising the percentage until they get what they want or give up. However, according to the principle of focusing on interests rather than positions, the first step would be to figure out why you want to raise in the first place. Is it because you feel undervalued? Do you want to buy a house? Or maybe you have a family to support? Then, instead of demanding a higher percentage, you should explain why you deserve it. For instance, you can say something like, "Have they been working really hard lately? And I think my contributions have positively impacted the team." Once you've explained your position, your boss might be willing to give you what you want. If not, you can try asking for other benefits like more vacation time or flexible working hours. The bottom line is that instead of getting stuck on a number, you should focus on what you really want and be prepared to explain why you deserve it. Otherwise, you might end up with nothing. The next negotiation strategy is to use evidence-based negotiation. This is a method often used in legal negotiations where lawyers use data, statistics, and case law to support their arguments. For example, let's say you're a plaintiff in a personal injury lawsuit. Your lawyer might tell you that the insurance company is offering you a low settlement because they think you won't be able to prove your case in court. If this is the case, you should ask your lawyer to gather evidence that supports your claim. This could include medical records, expert witness testimony, and prior statements made by the defendant. By providing this evidence to the insurance company, your lawyer can argue that you have a strong case and are likely to win if it goes to trial. As a result, the insurance company may be more likely to offer you a fair settlement. Using an evidence-based negotiation strategy can be helpful in other types of negotiations as well. For example, let's say you're trying to get a new client to sign a contract. You can use data to show them the benefits of working with you, or maybe you're trying to get a promotion at work. You can use statistics to show how you've contributed to the company's success. The key is to be prepared and have data ready that supports your argument. The final negotiation strategy is tactical flexibility. This is a strategy where you're willing to change your approach as the conversation unfolds. For example, let's say you're negotiating a business deal and things aren't going your way. You might start out by trying to compete against the other party. However, if that doesn't work, you can try cooperating instead. Or maybe you're trying to buy a car and you're not getting the price you want. You might start out by trying to persuade the salesperson to lower the price. However, if that doesn't work, you can try cooperating by offering to buy additional services. The key with this strategy is to be aware of when it is time to change your approach and be willing to do so. Otherwise, you might end up with nothing. Tactical flexibility can be useful in many different types of negotiations. Here's another example. Let's say you're a salesperson and you're trying to close a deal. You might start out by using a competitive strategy to get the customer to agree to a certain price. However, if that doesn't work, you can try using a cooperative strategy to build rapport with the customer and get them to see things your way. Being tactically flexible means being aware of different negotiation strategies and knowing when to use them. It also means being willing to compromise and finding creative solutions that benefit both parties. By following these tips, you can increase your chances of success in any negotiation. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever had to negotiate for something you wanted? What was your strategy and how did it turn out? Let us know in the comments below. If you liked this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to our channel. And if you want to keep learning, check out our free courses. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
Hello there, this is your host. In this lesson, we're going to talk about different contexts of dialogue. So if you're ready, let's get started. First of all, in a previous lesson, we talked about dialogue in general. We learned what dialogue means, why it is important, what its characteristics are, and we practiced some techniques for successful dialogue. Today, we will talk about different contexts of dialogue. A context is the set of circumstances that form the setting for an event, a situation, or a conversation. So, depending on the context, the topic, and the way we communicate can be very different. For example, imagine that you are a businessman and you have business partners from China. You want to start a negotiation with them. Well, before starting the negotiation, you need to know a few things about Chinese culture. If you don't do so, you may cause offense and that would not help your business at all. Knowing these things beforehand will help you to adapt your style of communication and negotiation to their needs and customs. This is called cultural sensitivity. There are many things that you should know about Chinese culture, But for our purposes today, let's talk about one thing in particular: how people react to direct criticism. In Chinese culture, people tend to be more sensitive to criticism than Americans. So you need to avoid any kind of direct criticism because it could be embarrassing for them. Instead, you need to focus on the solution and say something like, "Well, this is a little problem, but we can solve it if we work together." By doing so, you are showing respect and consideration for their culture, and you are building a foundation for a successful negotiation. Another thing that you should consider is that Chinese culture tends to be more collectivist, which means that they care more about the welfare of the group than the individual. So, when you are negotiating with them, keep that in mind and try to find solutions that benefit both parties equally. Now let's go back to talking about contexts. As I said, in each context, the topic and the way we talk about it will be different. Let's see some examples. A. In global negotiation. It is always important to look for common ground to build a foundation for cooperation. One good strategy is to focus on problems that affect everyone. Nowadays, we face many global issues like climate change, pandemics, terrorism, human trafficking, and drug trafficking, just to name a few. These are serious problems that require international cooperation to solve. So you can bring up any of these topics to start a conversation and get people working together. Of course, you need to show respect and be sensitive to cultural differences. And the best way to do so is by being knowledgeable about other cultures. If you don't know much about the culture of your partner, you should research about it before starting the conversation. For example, if you are talking to someone from the Middle East, you should know that they might be more reserved at first. But that doesn't mean that they are unfriendly. It's just part of their culture, so you shouldn't take it personally. On the other hand, if you are talking to someone from Latin America, you should know that they are usually very passionate people. So they might talk very animatedly and use a lot of body language. Again, this is just part of their culture, and you shouldn't be intimidated by it. Another good strategy is to emphasize the shared humanity that we all have. We are all human beings after all, and we all have the same basic needs and desires. By emphasizing this, you can create a sense of common identity and build a foundation for trust and understanding. B. In commercial negotiations, the main goal is to find areas of mutual benefit. To do so, you need to analyze the value chain of a product or service. The value chain is a tool that helps you understand how a company creates value for its customers. It includes all the activities that a company does from the moment it receives an order until the moment it delivers the final product or service. So, when you analyze the value chain of a product or service, you can identify where there is room for improvement and where there is potential for cost savings. Once you identify those areas, you can negotiate with your supplier or your customer to reach an agreement that benefits both parties. For example, if you are a car manufacturer and you buy engines from a supplier, you can negotiate a lower price for the engines in exchange for placing a larger order. Or you can ask for a discount if you agree to pay for the engines in advance. By doing so, you are finding an area of mutual benefit in the value chain and creating a win-win situation. Another example is when you sign a contract with a client. The contract should be flexible enough to cover all possible scenarios in the future. For example, if you are signing a long-term partnership with a client, you should include a periodic review clause that allows you to renegotiate the terms of the contract every year or two. This will ensure that the contract continues to be beneficial for both parties as the market and your business needs change over time. C. In political negotiations, the main goal is to build alliances and find points of agreement between competing parties. There are many different types of political negotiations, such as peace negotiations, trade negotiations, and diplomatic negotiations. But the main goal of all of them is the same: find a solution that satisfies the interests of all parties involved. One way to achieve this goal is through public diplomacy. Public diplomacy is the art of persuading the public opinion. It is the way you communicate with the public to build relationships and create understanding between nations. An example of public diplomacy in action is when the United States government sends cultural exchange programs to other countries. These programs allow people to learn about American culture and exchange ideas with Americans. By doing so, the U.S. government is building relationships and creating understanding between the two countries. D. In legal negotiations, the main goal is to find a solution to a conflict that is acceptable to both parties. To do so, lawyers use a variety of negotiation techniques and strategies. One of them is alternative dispute resolution, also known as ADR. ADR is any method of resolving a legal dispute outside of court. It includes methods such as mediation, arbitration, conciliation, and negotiation. Of these methods, negotiation is the most common. It is simply a process in which two or more parties try to reach an agreement with each other. Mediation, on the other hand, is a process in which a third party helps two disputing parties to reach an agreement. Arbitration is similar to mediation, but the decision is binding. So, the main goal of ADR is to help parties resolve their conflicts in a more efficient and less adversarial way than traditional litigation. In legal negotiations, lawyers rely heavily on legal texts and precedents. This means that they base their arguments on laws, rules, and previous court decisions. They also take into account the ethical context of the case. For example, even if a lawyer believes that his client is guilty, he must still defend his client in court to the best of his ability. This is because the law requires it, and it is the ethical thing to do. To sum up, each context of dialogue has its own characteristics and challenges. However, regardless of the context, the main goal of dialogue is the same: find a solution that works for everyone. Keep in mind that dialogue is not easy, but it is necessary if we want to solve the problems we face nowadays. That's all for today. I hope this lesson was helpful. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a like and subscribe to our channel. You can also write down in the comments below what you think about contexts of dialogue. What other contexts can you think of? Are there any differences in the way you talk depending on the context? Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Hi everyone, it's me. Today, we are going to talk about how to manage a successful negotiation by following 6 practical steps, and we will support each of these steps with one scientific tool that can help you reach a win-win outcome. Step number 1, preparation. First and foremost, make sure that you have a clear understanding of what you want to achieve from the negotiation. So you need to define your goal and your success criteria. Consider the best alternative to a negotiated agreement, your BATNA. Your BATNA is the course of action that you would take if the negotiation fails. Knowing your BATNA helps you determine your reservation point or the minimum acceptable outcome. Conduct research to gather information about the other party's position and interests. What do they want to achieve? What are their priorities? The more information you have, the better prepared you will be. Finally, consider the different scenarios and possible outcomes. Develop your strategy based on your analysis. Prepare your opening statement, the points you want to raise during the discussion and your responses to potential counter-arguments. Rehearse your delivery and timing. Step 2. Opening. Make a positive statement to establish a good atmosphere for negotiation. Express appreciation for the other party and their willingness to work with you. Acknowledge any common ground you may have. Here's an example. I appreciate the opportunity to work with you to find a solution that meets the needs of both parties. Be polite, professional, and confident. Smile, make eye contact, and use open body language. This sets a collaborative tone from the start and encourages the other party to do likewise. Step number 3. Discussion. Ask open-ended questions to encourage the other party to share information. Begin by asking the other party about their needs and interests. Why do they want to work with you? What are their expectations? How can you meet their needs? Show genuine interest in their perspective. Listen actively and build on what they say. One way to start the conversation is to ask, "What do you see as the biggest obstacle to this project?" Or, "How can I help you achieve your objectives?" By asking open-ended questions, you encourage the other party to elaborate, explain their position, and reveal their underlying interests. This step helps you build rapport, establish trust, and gain insight into the other party's priorities and concerns. By truly listening and understanding their perspective, you lay the groundwork for a mutually beneficial agreement. Step number 4. Proposing solutions. Propose multiple options that address the other party's needs. Build on the information you gathered during the discussion. Offer creative solutions that go beyond simply dividing the pie. Aim for a win-win outcome where both parties feel satisfied with the agreement. You can say something like, "Based on our conversation, here are some possible ways forward. Which option sounds most appealing to you and why?" Don't be afraid to suggest several alternatives. In doing so, you demonstrate flexibility and a willingness to find a mutually agreeable solution. By presenting multiple options, you increase the likelihood of finding one that satisfies both parties' core interests. Additionally, involving the other party in the discussion from the outset increases their commitment to the chosen option. Their buy-in from the start makes it more likely that they will see the final agreement as fair and equitable. Step number 5. Bargaining. Be prepared to give and take while protecting your core interests. Concessions are an essential part of the negotiation process. When you concede on an issue, it means you are making a significant change to your initial proposal. The science of negotiation teaches us that concessions should be reciprocal. That is, if you make a concession, you expect the other party to do the same. However, there is a caveat. You should only make a concession if it does not compromise your core interests. Core interests are the fundamental needs and objectives that you must absolutely achieve in the negotiation. For example, let's say you are negotiating a salary for a new job. Step number 6. Closing. Summarize the main points of the agreement and draft a written document. Once you and the other party have reached an understanding, it's essential to formalize the agreement in writing. This step ensures that both parties are on the same page and have a clear understanding of their commitments. When drafting the agreement, pay attention to details such as implementation timelines, key performance indicators, and dispute resolution mechanisms. Clearly outline the roles and responsibilities of each party. This written document serves as a valuable reference point throughout the project or business relationship. It helps avoid future misunderstandings and provides a framework for holding each party accountable. By taking the time to properly close the negotiation and document the agreement, you set the stage for a successful and collaborative partnership. Let's now review the 6 steps and the 3 supporting tools for successful negotiation. Step 1. Preparation. Understand your goals, BATNA, conduct research, prepare your opening statement, and rehearse your delivery. Supporting tool, SWOT model. The SWOT model stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats. It's a strategic planning tool that helps you analyze the internal and external factors related to your negotiation. Your strengths and weaknesses are internal factors that you have control over, while opportunities and threats are external factors that you may or may not be able to influence directly. Let's look at an example. Imagine you are a salesperson working for a company that sells software solutions for businesses. Your company has developed a new software product that helps businesses automate their marketing tasks. The software is user-friendly and customizable, making it appealing to a wide range of businesses. In this scenario, the strength could be the software's user-friendliness and customizability, meaning that it has features that make it easy to use and adapt to different business needs. A weakness could be that the software is new to the market and hasn't yet built up a reputation or customer base. An opportunity could be the growing trend of businesses adopting automation tools to improve efficiency, indicating a favorable market condition for your software product. A threat could be the entry of new competitors in the software market offering similar products. Step 2. Opening. Make a positive statement to establish a good atmosphere for negotiation. Use an opening statement to express appreciation, Acknowledge common ground and set a collaborative tone. Supporting tool, mind mapping. Mind mapping is a visual technique that helps you brainstorm ideas, organize information, and explore connections between different concepts. Here's an example. Let's say you are planning a project and want to use mind mapping to generate ideas for increasing engagement among participants. Start with the central idea in the middle of the page, for example, increasing participant engagement. Then use branches to connect related ideas. One branch could be interactive activities, with sub-branches listing specific activities like icebreakers, group discussions, and team-building exercises. Another branch could be communication strategies, with sub-branches for regular check-ins, feedback sessions, and open communication channels. Step 3. Discussion. Ask open-ended questions to encourage the other party to share information. Guide the conversation by asking questions that help the other party articulate their needs, interests, and priorities. Supporting tool, scenario simulation. Scenario simulation involves imagining and preparing for different situations that may arise during the negotiation. Consider various perspectives and possible reactions to your proposals. Here's an example. Let's say you are negotiating a salary for a job you really want. The employer offers you a lower salary than you expected. Instead of immediately counter-offering, take a moment to consider the possible reasons behind the employer's offer. They might be trying to gauge your reaction, or they might genuinely believe that the offered salary is competitive. Based on your analysis, you can formulate an appropriate response. You might acknowledge the offer while expressing your qualifications and the value you can bring to the role. By practicing different responses in your mind, you become more comfortable with handling unexpected situations and can navigate the conversation effectively. Step 4. Proposing solutions. Offer multiple options that address the other party's needs. Provide creative solutions that go beyond simple concessions and aim for a win-win outcome. Step 5. Bargaining. Be prepared to give and take while protecting your core interests. Make concessions when it doesn't compromise your fundamental needs or objectives. Step 6. Closing. Summarize the main points of the agreement and draft a written document. Ensure both parties are on the same page by clearly outlining the terms and conditions of the agreement. Remember, effective negotiation is a crucial skill in various aspects of life. By following these 6 steps and utilizing the supporting tools, you can enhance your ability to reach mutually beneficial agreements. Practice and persistence are key to mastering the art of negotiation. Thanks for watching. See you next time.